Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 111, and the story is titled May the Force Be With You. And I hope you enjoy it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And here we go. It sure seemed like a normal day when Thomas woke up that Saturday morning. He got up late, having gone to bed later than he should have, though not later than he usually did, and brushed his teeth. The mirror was normal. His reflection was normal. The water that he splashed on his face was normal. His antiperspirant went on normally, and he could not smell it, which was also normal, as he had grown so accustomed to its scent that he could only smell it by putting his nose practically on the stick. He grabbed his phone and went downstairs and decided not to have breakfast until after he hit the gym, which was exceptionally normal for him. He always tried to get in some exercise before eating, as he hated working out on a full stomach. However, he did pour a glass of water from the Brita pitcher and drank it. It tasted vaguely of his toothpaste, which was normal. The car in his garage was normal, as was his street. The weather was exceptionally normal for that time of year. Fall overcast, which would likely burn off around noon. Perhaps he would have noticed something if he'd listened to the radio on the way to the gym, but who does that now? So nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He entered the gym and, out of politeness, turned off his music to exchange pleasantries with the woman checking IDs. "Morning," he said, holding out the little key fob. "May the Force be with you," she said brightly, checking him in with a little handheld laser. Thomas did a bit of a double take. "It's not May," he said. She crinkled her forehead a bit. "I'm sorry?" "It's fall," he explained, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Yes," she agreed. She seemed to be humoring him. "Okay," Thomas said, and headed to the changing room. Why would she make that May the 4th joke in October, he wondered. He kept wondering until he was out on the floor. Though he seemed to remember that she said May the Force, not May the 4th, just like Obi-Wan. He exercised, and everything seemed normal enough. He'd forgotten about the incident at the front desk when he noticed that one of the televisions, which was showing ESPN, had a Star Wars Rebel symbol in the bottom right corner. That's right, there's another movie coming out in a couple of months, he thought. And then he remembered that both Star Wars and ESPN were owned by Disney. That explains it then, he thought. He noticed that a number of people had on Star Wars t-shirts. This was perhaps nothing too unusual. Star Wars t-shirts were common enough. Thomas himself had one. And it was likely due to selection bias. It was like when you buy a Honda Civic or whatever, and then all of a sudden notice all these Honda Civics out on the road. It feels like the road is half filled with the little roly-poly Civics. If he hadn't had a conversation about Star Wars, he likely wouldn't have noticed all the Star Wars t-shirts today. Though really, there did seem to be an awful lot of them. Was it all down to his own selection bias, or was it people seeing the ads for the movie coming up and wearing their Star Wars t-shirts more often? Or was it nothing? In the end, this question faded from his mind as the gym session wrapped up and he headed out. He didn't have too busy a Saturday to fill, but he was going to meet an old friend for dinner. He thought about her while he cleaned up around his house and listened to random music from his collection. His wife had left him almost 4 years ago, and he had yet to date since then. It had come as such a shock. In the time since, he had come to realize that he had forgotten to pay attention to her. He'd assumed that marriage meant forever. The thought didn't help much. They met at an Ethiopian restaurant. Emily looked much as she had the last time Thomas had seen her, some 6 years prior. She wore her hair just past the shoulder, her natural auburn color falling in waves. She still wore oversized glasses that accentuated how tiny her nose was. He had always thought that she looked a bit like a squirrel. "How are the kids?" he asked. "Fine," she said. "One's starting high school, the other's in middle school." "That's great," he said. They sat in silence for a moment. The server came and took their orders. Then there was some more silence. "I don't remember us having long pauses in conversation back in college," Emily said. "Yeah," Thomas said. "What happened? Is it just that it's been a little too long, or is it something else?" Thomas considered this. "I hope it's just that it's been a few years. If it keeps happening, then we should probably revisit this question." A most reasonable approach, she said, smiling. Was I being funny? Thomas asked. You were being you, she said. Okay, Thomas said. I think we should jumpstart the conversation, she said. We're a little out of practice with each other. Each of us should share something big or small, nothing too personal, maybe something we saw or something even that we felt. Such as? Well, I'll go first and then you can follow. She took a moment, though Thomas had the feeling she knew already what she wanted to say. Back in college, I saw you naked. What? Thomas said, spluttering. Yeah, well, by accident, she said. You were drunk. Remember sophomore year? Parts of it, he said, holding down a laugh. It was early November. You proclaimed that you wanted to get good and drunk since you had missed the Halloween parties the week before due to a couple of tests you had to study for. You got way more drunk than anyone else and stumbled off to your room. I decided to check on you. You were passed out, mostly on your bed, with your shirt off and your pants and underwear around your ankles. You still had your shoes on, and I think they got stuck and decided to pass out instead of working out how to get the shoes off so you could get your pants off. I took off your shoes and, well, your pants were basically off anyway. Instead of trying to tug them back up over your hips, I just finished pulling them off, pulled your feet onto the bed, and rolled you over so you were on your stomach. She sat back and watched him. He just stared back, a little slack-jawed. Oh, well, he ventured. Thanks for keeping me from choking to death like a Spinal Tap drummer. She smiled. I'm not sure that was the best way to get conversation going. You seem a little shocked. Yeah. So let's keep trying. What do you have for me? Well, I've never seen you naked. Do you have another naked story you'd like to tell me? I did see the women's basketball team naked. Do tell. They all ran past me and a friend naked one night. Not because we were there. They were streaking. There were a few others, too, men and women lagging behind. We found out later that the team had been invited to a drama house party, and they had all been told that it was drama house tradition to streak at your first party there. Which, come to think of it, was probably true. Emily laughed. I think so, yeah. I mean, I did. Did you? He asked, laughing. It was fun, the sort of thing you only really get away with in college. Yeah, he said. Though I wish I'd felt more free to do that sort of thing. Sober, I mean. Have you been able to loosen up some recently? Like since we saw each other last? No. No, not really. Though part of me really wants to. And they settled into happy conversation, much of it centered around their college experiences, mutual and separate. At the end of the dinner, they gave a quick hug, and as Emily got in her car, she gave a cheery, "May the force be with you!" Thomas, who had all but forgotten the strange occurrence at the gym that morning, was too surprised to do anything but watch her back up her car and drive off. And that's the end of the story for this week. I am planning on continuing it for next week, so if you enjoyed this, we'll have more of it for you next week, and Thomas is going to have to figure out what's going on. And if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. People and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.